Welcome to this video on why and why not to shoot JPEGs. There's times you might want to use them, there's times you may not. Probably one of the biggest advantages of JPEG is really the large format it has with decent quality. If you have a good exposure in the camera, you're not going to be able to tell much difference between that and a raw file. In fact, you may not tell with the naked eye the difference if done appropriately. We always want to have good camera control. We want to make sure the exposure is correct. We want to make sure we're getting it right in camera, even when shooting raw. But a JPEG, if you do it right, you'll get a really good quality product to use. Here we have advantage of good quality with a properly exposed JPEG. If we do it right, it won't make that much of a difference. In fact, it really won't. Shoot your exposures correctly, get the white balance correct in camera, and you'll be in a good place. A fact about JPEGs, high compression, low compression, is the higher the compression, the image starts to fall apart. We've saved this one here on the left lots and lots of times. We saved it at a high compression, so it's a small file size. You can see the quality just doesn't look near as good. It's not as crisp and sharp because we're losing important detail, data, by compressing it to make it smaller for emailing or for the internet or texting the image nice and small. So we want to be careful of over compressing, which does happen if we're not careful. And every time we save a JPEG, close the software, open it up in Photoshop or another software, save it, close it, and come back. We're compressing and losing, throwing away information every time. So eventually we will lose a significant amount of quality the more times we edit the file. Here is a very obvious extreme case of visual compression. We can see the artifacts, the banding, the particles that are disappearing because it's been over-compressed, saved multiple times, and it can happen. Now I've exaggerated, I've zoomed into a small part of the picture, so you can see the quality defects. But part of shooting JPEG is when you make major changes, major saves, and resaving, it can cause an issue. Here's a picture I shot a number of years ago on a Canon R8, about 12 years ago I think, and it was almost completely black as the original exposure. So I took the JPEG and I brightened it up 5 stops. I took the RAW and I brightened it up 5 stops. You can see it just doesn't have the detail, the tone, the quality that a RAW file would. So this is the case you might not necessarily want to have shot just a JPEG. You'd be in trouble if this is the only capture you had here on the left. Thankfully, it was just a studio shot. We had a lot of control. The light didn't fire for a second. We got it fixed, and we were on our way shooting pictures. A recent wedding shot on the Canon R6 Mark II. The JPEG actually did a better job than I thought. Previous cameras, even like a Canon 6D, a Canon 60D, I've shot some of those cameras in the past. It wouldn't bring as much detail back. So I think there's more range now in our JPEG data that's captured with some of these processes in the camera, where when I took the overexposure, about 1.5 stops too bright, and I brought it down as a JPEG, turned the highlights all the way down, reduced the exposure to -0.25, and it actually looks pretty good. It wouldn't be, if you didn't see the original or the raw capture edit, you would think, oh, this looks pretty good. But we're getting more detail in the raw, so we don't have quite the range in overexposure compensation or underexposure compensation that we would with a JPEG compared to raw. So those would be things you have to consider, the pluses and the minuses. Definitely the convenient small file size is a big deal. Having a small file size is important for storage. If you go into the back of your camera, you can actually go ahead and you can change the settings so you can make it so it will actually have a smaller, more compressed setting in the camera. I highly recommend using the large file size and a high compression rate. I highly recommend using the large file size with a low compression, so you're getting a high quality picture right out of the camera. Because if you shoot only JPEG and you're shooting at a small resolution, megapixel size, and you're shooting with heavy compression, you're going to have some of the problems that JPEG is plagued with right out of the camera, and you don't necessarily want to do that. It is required to shoot by many of the major photo sites out there. Getty, Reuters, Associated Press, AP Images will require shooters to have shot in a JPEG format. It allows quick, easy upload access, and it also changes the option for someone to maybe unethically edit in the raw conversion process. But some of the disadvantages, some things that people say, oh, you should never shoot JPEG. And I don't say you should never shoot JPEG. There's times you very well probably should shoot JPEG, and for some companies you have to shoot JPEG. Is lossy compression. We've looked at the examples. The lossy compression falls apart. Every time you're saving or resaving, you're having quality loss issues. So if you do have a JPEG, keep that master file somewhere on your computer, and you can come back to it in the future and can edit the original picture if you're looking for the best quality piece. Every save will degrade quality, every single one. So be careful of saving and resaving over top of each file. Higher the compression, they'll lower the image quality. So if you want to be careful of having too much compression, either in the camera or if you go to saving in Photoshop and you save it with a low setting and the quality setting of your output once you're done editing, that will also reduce the quality of your image. The reason for that is we have 8-bit data. Probably in more detailed time we'll talk about the major details of data and bit rates. But 8-bit data is what the naked eye can see, about 256 subtle different tones for each color. We don't have any more than that. So if we over or underexpose our image and we have to change that data in the computer, that's when we have issues. So it's because we have a lower bit rate. That's why it doesn't have the quality that we would with a RAW. And you can see my RAW video and some of the advantages of that. In camera, when you actually go to the settings and you choose camera settings, it will make changes to your contrast, to your sharpening, to your color decisions at the time of capture. When you take your button and you actually choose the exposure, you have now captured those edits. All the raw data is processed, put the color choices, the contrast choices, the sharpness choices are all put into that setting and file. So it's already done significant changes from the raw file to the JPEG file just as soon as you push the shutter. You can't make those edits anymore. So that's something to consider changing in the future. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you give it a thumbs up. Hit subscribe to see more videos just like this one. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.